Oh, wait a second. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome to Istac-Iium Distinguished Scholar Lecture number 8. And today, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, respected scholars, physical and online, it is with great pleasure that we gather here today to explore the captivating intersections of religion, feminism, and Islam. And our distinguished speaker today is Professor Hamidullah Marazi, who will bring us a wealth of knowledge and experience to this discourse, having spent 3 decades teaching at renowned institutions such as Kashmir University and Central University Kashmir. He has lectured at over 100 universities worldwide on topics including comparative religions, Islam, and interreligious dialogue, and is recognized for his profound insights into Norsian thought. And currently, he is our visiting research fellow at Istac-Iium, and Prof. Marazi's contributions extend to various domains, including education, Islam, women issues, Islamic philosophy, and many more. And today we eagerly anticipate delving into his enlightening perspectives on this significant subject matter. And please join me in extending a warm welcome to Professor Hamidullah Marazi. And today's discussion, we will explore the multifaceted dynamics surrounding women in the context of religions, feminism, and Islam. Can you close this? Sorry. Professor Hamidullah Marazi, a distinguished scholar with extensive experience in religious studies, will guide us through his thought-provoking discourse. His expertise garnered over, I've read this, sorry, of 3 decades of teaching and lecturing worldwide promises to shed light on the complexities and interconnections within these themes. And from his insights into comparative religion to his profound understanding of Norsian thought, Prof. Marazi's perspective offers a unique lens through which to examine contemporary Muslim affairs. And the discussion of women in Islam goes beyond mere equality, and it revolves on understanding and fulfilling their responsibilities, which are integral to the very objective of life in Islam. And Muslim women have played pivotal roles throughout history, contributing to the spiritual and social advancement of Muslim societies. However, misconceptions and misinterpretations often obscure their contributions and rights within the Islamic framework. So without further ado, we call upon Professor Hamidullah Marazi to enlighten more on regards to this topic.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد. First of all, I thank Allah for this opportunity, and then I thank Professor Abdulaziz Bargot, Professor Murad, Professor Ahmed, Professor Pram Galib, and my sister, Dr. NURUL, and all the friends and students and research scholars who have made it today. I have been teaching this subject for last 25 years in Kashmir, in different universities. And alhamdulillah, I had a chance to visit many countries like USA to participate in the conference on women. And there I also presented Islamic viewpoint. Tomorrow is Women's Day. So we are celebrating it one day before. So in this way, it is a very relevant subject, and we need to study and talk about this more and more. Because as my sister has rightly said, there are lots of confusions about Muslim women. And I always say, Islam had given women many rights, but Muslims have snatched all. Feminists give women rights, but after snatching her femininity. So this is the dilemma. So now, when we talk about women, so there are different perspectives. I will be talking today, inshallah, from the philosophical point of what philosophers say about women. Because as I always say, nowadays the narratives are being created by the philosophers, not the religious people. They are following philosophy of Auguste Comte. Earlier stage was theological stage, then this metaphysical, then this positivist. Now it is positivistic and philosophical stage. For the West, not for the rest. So in this way, we have to understand what philosophers say about women. As has been said in Arabic, as Professor Faham Galib Sahab can explain better, that we can understand things better only when we compare them. If we want to see what is the position of women in Islam, we should see what is the position of women in other religions. What feminists say about women, what philosophers say about women. Then we can realize only what is the status given to women by Islam. And in the USA, I said, if all the women of the world will come to know what status has been given to women, they will opt for Islamic position. I was speaking this in front of the feminists. We were in Seneca Lake, where from this moment has started. And alhamdulillah, I had some encounters with Professor Amin at Indonesia and Kashmir. So I believe that we have to engage ourselves with the present narrative and then try to contextualize our thought. We are not doing that. We are sometimes just without contextualizing, we are talking. And we are talking from the theological perspective, which is not being understood by the modern world. So for that reason, I am trying to just build upon this subject in this way. So first of all, I would like to say that the problems involved with the issues of women are multiple and can be seen from various perspectives. Philosophers have defined the position of women, but with the exception of Pythagoras, all of them have considered women below dignity and not deserving to be considered equal to man. I am saying with authority, I am quoting. For example, we have Democritus. What he says? He says he thought ill of women and he did not desire children. He says we don't need children because their education interferes with philosophy. So philosophy is more important than women and family for people like Democritus. And we have people, Hesiod. He declared women merely a chattel, like a household item, a property. And then, as I told you about Pythagoras, he is the person who has talked at least about women, that they are more akin to piety. And so far as Plato is concerned, he says friends should have all things in common, including women and children. However, some education is recommended for both. So woman is the common property. Communism of wives and communism of property, very famous saying of Plato. So he has thought about that. Now they are projecting themselves that we have given women the greatest status based on their own enlightenment and renaissance. And you can see these are some of, I have just quoted from Aristotle's books and the books which have written on him by different people like Doran, A History of Knowledge. Aristotle's doctrines of natural inferiority and female inferiority respectively helped to justify slavery and inequality of the sexes until our time. He says that women have only 18 teeth. Although he had 2 wives, he never counted their teeth and they never showed him their teeth. Alhamdulillah, now women are showing their teeth to philosophers and those people who are just doing injustice to them. Among the natural slaves, according to Aristotle, were the women, natural slaves. Women are the natural slaves. For the most part, in the ancient world, women were totally without any rights. If citizens at all, women were invariably citizens of the second class. Occasionally, a woman rose to prominence and power, for example, Queen Boadicea or the Empress Theodora or the Queen of Sheba. But these exceptions barely proved the rule. This ancient prejudice against women was not surprising. But according to Charles Doran, it is more surprising that the Declaration of Independence, with all its splendid rhetoric of rights, makes no mention of women and may not have intended to include them in its ringing proclamation that, quote, all men are endowed by Creator with certain unalienable rights, unquote. The propaganda campaign for women emancipation waged by the press, radio, and cinema belittles the role of women as wife and mother and describes those who stay in their homes raising their children as an unpardonable economic loss of half of the nation's power. So you can see Averroes lamented the fact that Islam had not adopted Plato's view of women as the equal of men and had thus failed to give them equal civic equality. Such treatment, he thought, would have improved the economy. So our philosophers, when they started following some of the views of the Greeks, especially during the medieval time, Ibn Sina, and then Al-Farabi, Ibn Rushd, and Ibn Tufail, and Ibn Baja, and Ibn Miskawi, and so many others. Some of them followed blindly Western, paradigm, or the Greek paradigm. And then they started echoing what the philosophers have said. And they showed that there is superiority of the perspective of the Greeks to the Muslim viewpoint about women and other subjects. Now, Nietzsche, Nietzsche, beyond good and evil. So what he says, women have so much cause for shame. In women, there is so much pedantry, superficiality, schoolmasterliness, petty presumption, unbridledness, and indiscretion concealed, which has really been best restrained and dominated thereto by the fear of man. He says this in his book, Beyond Good and Evil. And he says, we should think of women as property, as Orientals do. This is the great Nietzsche. Here, and thus spake Zarathustra. In that also he has said about women, he has set very negative tone when he's talking about women. And then we have people like John Stuart Mill. At least was John Stuart Mill who has espoused the philosophy of gender equality in the 19th century. In his book, The Subjugation of Women, which was published in 1869, and he wanted to show that women should be given equal rights in the areas of education, employment, and political rights to vote. So in this way, it shows that women has been not treated well by the philosophers also. And I told you that Western perspective of women has been, created by philosophy, not by religion, after Renaissance, after Enlightenment. We have to understand this. Then only we can understand what is feminism, why there was need of feminism in the West, why not in the Islamic world. Although we import ideas from there, because whatever comes from the West, we say this is the norm, this is the standard. Because West has a dominant civilization. because they have controlled knowledge and they are controlling our minds also, as has been said by many scholars like Edward Said and John Paul Sartre and even Bertrand Russell. So in this way, they are controlling the narrative about everything. They are educating us. They want to civilize us because power is knowledge. Oh, Brother Balakrishnan, so he is in charge of the minority affairs, please, of Malaysia. We met there in South Korea, international count. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Mashallah, most welcome. So in this way, we can see that how philosophers have dealt with this problem, and especially now coming to Russell. Russell is a little bit clear about women. So he says that we should not be giving women the education we are giving to men, because they have to be given some education to prepare for the children. He accepts this reality, while as feminists have denied that I will talk about feminists later on. So he says there has been an attempt to acquire the same education as given to the boys, even where it was by no means good in itself. Consequently, women educators have aimed at giving to their girls such useless knowledge as is given to boys the same class, and have been bitter opponents of the notion that some part of female education should be technical training for motherhood, unquote. And Russell has talked about other aspects also. He advises the girls that they should be taught to expect that one day they are likely to be mothers, and they should acquire some rudiments of the knowledge that may be useful to them in that capacity. But Russell has talked about other aspects also, but I am leaving some of these because of the paucity of time. And he says one thing which is worth quoting. He says the worst future of the Christian religion, or he says, I am not saying, because I am a man from religious studies, I have respect for all the religions. But we have to understand what Western people say about religion, and they think that it is religion which is responsible for the degradation of the states of women. So Russell says the worst feature of the Christian religion, however, is its attitude towards sex, an attitude so morbid and so unnatural that can be understood only when taken in relation to sickness of the civilized world. At the time when a Roman Empire was decaying, we sometimes hear talk to the effect that Christianity improved the condition of women, says Russell. This is one of the grossest perversions of history that is possible to make. Monks have always regarded women primarily as the temptress. They have thought of her mainly as the inspirer of impulse lusts, unquote, says Bertrand Russell. And this, in the same way, the position of women has not improved because of the same reason. There had been some problem with the women's issue because of religion. And that has been mentioned by Bertrand Russell. Let us be candid, without having any qualms for anyone. If any injustice has been done to women, either by the clergy or by the philosophers or by any other group, we have to accept that. Women have been victimized. Even religious people have not given women rights. And it was natural to protest. And this was the reason why the feminist movement emerged in the West. Because they were, and I will tell you about that, what they say, what women's, feminists say about that. So in this way, we find that the position of women did not improve in the West also. And when we take a historical view of the situation, we come to know that in the early 19th century, the legal existence of wife was suspended during marriage. That is, the husband and wife were deemed to be one person. And the husband and wife are husband, not husband and wife. And the enactment of the Married Women's Property Acts in the mid-19th century, as well as later reforms, provided a wife with legal rights from which she was previously barred. So we needed to give her some rights. Provided a wife with legal rights from which she was barred, including the right to own property. Otherwise, she was considered to be property. It took about 500 years to the West to understand that women have also separated. You know witchcraft? whole story of witchcraft you should see, but in the Western context. So what woman was being considered? She's a witch, Nuzbillah. I say Nuzbillah. But in Islamic perspective, religious perspective, in Hindu perspective also, I know how much importance has been given to mother, and how much importance has been given to mother in Buddhism also, in Islam, in other religions. But in the Western context, she was considered to be the witch, and people were thinking that she has no spirit at all, and she was considered to be animate property. And slaves, friends should have everything in common, as I mentioned about Plato, including women and children. This means it was in mid-century, 19th century, as well as the later reforms, which provided women some rights. And she could dispose her property, or she sue or be sued. Sign contract in her name and execute a deed according to her will. And for the reason the women were just it has been said by Rousseau. What Rousseau says, that women have no reason. They feel that not reason. He says he was opposed to the idea of providing women with the same education as men. Rousseau, one of the great pioneers of the Enlightenment. Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Rousseau. These are very important, prominent, pillars of enlightenment. But what he says, we should not give women the same education we are giving to men. And most of these quotes are from the book of Bertrand Russell. So I have tried to quote from the Western scholars so that people may not say you are biased. I'm not biased. I just want to locate how people have treated women. And it has been said by, Studenten, that civilized women are so weakened by false refinement that responding morals, their conscience is much below what it would be were they left in the state of near nature. She held that women, like men, were naturally rational, but their inferior education often taught them to be silly and emotional. Education, she believed, should cultivate the natural reasoning capacity in girls. In the early 19th century, the vast majority of women throughout Europe and the United States still had no legal identity apart from their husbands. As I said already, she could not own property on her name. Both white women and African Americans were regarded as intellectually inferior and denied access to their decent education. Now we can see what Stanton says and Wollstonecraft says about that. And for example, she has talked about women, about the legislation on February 18th, 1860, while comparing the women with the black African Americans who were being discriminated because of their color. She laments that the women are worse sufferers than the blacks because of their sex code. The Negro skin and the woman's sex are both prima facie evidence that they were intended to be in subjugation to the white section man. She says further, undo what man did for us in the dark ages. And dark ages? And strike all legislation which has been made for women by him, by man. She exhorts women to do. She complains of the, quote, listless inactivity, unquote, and, quote, to enable man to acquire the noble privilege of reason, stupid existence, while the woman had to remain in the dust, never to rise again. According to her, the women were supposed to have been created to feel rather than reason. And, quote, their charms and weakness must obtain that all the power they obtain, or in other words, they are just sweet flowers that smile in the way of man, unquote. Rousseau had cautioned in a different manner about the education of women, as I said, educate women like men. And the more they resemble our sex, the less power will they have over us, unquote. Not because she deserves to be educated, so that she will have no power on us. Otherwise she will exert her power. And now see women rights, and this movement started there. Women had no right to vote. And the suffrage movement, you know about that. and women's rights of vote. Women were given suffrage, and in the 1960s, the civil rights movement gained ground when African Americans struggled to achieve racial equality. Women were inspired to renew their struggle for equality. So both the groups were fighting for their rights, women as well as the Black Africans. Now women and religion. So this was what philosophy has done to women. Why I have just started from philosophy? Because feminism is also a philosophy. So we need to understand that. And I feel, as I have been teaching, I have been researching on the subject, why this feminist movement started. It was a revolt against religion. So as there was revolt against religion, against clergy from the philosophers, so was the revolt against religion from the feminists in most cases. And now see, we can talk about religion. So we could say it, every religion protects women. Protecting women is religion. If this becomes the slogan, that's great. But it is not always like that. Let us be candid. In the history of religions, women has been also not treated well in many ways. Whatever the reasons, as has been said by the scholars of women's studies, Professor Zinat Kosar, there have been three approaches to women. One approach is tribal approach or traditional approach. It has nothing to do with religion. Because we are against, for example, honor. We know honor killing is going on. They don't want that women should marry outside their clan or tribe. It has nothing to do with religion. But it is tribal traditions are like that. Then honor killings take place. Second is modernist approach, where women has been given those rights which are more than men. And woman ceases to be a woman. She is being given rights, but not as a woman, as a superhuman. And then she fights against man. And I will talk about that, what feminists have told about this approach to women. And women were made to fight against men, and men had to also react. So now see, for example, Judaism. Judaism, the concept has been the reason behind the double standard in the laws of adultery and behind the husband's ability to annul his wife's vows. This conception has also been responsible for denying the wife any control over the property of her earnings. As soon as Jewish women got married, she completely lost any control over her property and earnings to her husband. Jewish rabbis asserted the husband's right to his wife's property as a corollary of his possession of her. Quote, since one has come into the possession of the woman, does it not follow that he should come into the possession of her property too, unquote, and quote, since he has acquired the woman, should he not acquire also her property? Thus, marriage caused the richest woman to become practically penniless. The Talmud describes the financial situation of wife as follows, quote, how can a woman have anything? Whatever is hers belongs to her husband. What is his, and what is hers is also his. Interesting. What is his is his. What is hers is also his. Her earnings and what she may find in the streets are also his. The household articles, even the crumbs of bread on the table are his. And if she eats something from house of her husband, as she is stealing from her husband, and I have quoted even the verse, the fact of the matter is that the property of the Jewish family was meant to attract suitors. A Jewish family would assign their daughter a share of her father's estate to be used as a dowry in case of marriage. It was the dowry that made Jewish daughters an unwelcome burden to their fathers. The father had to raise his daughter for years and then prepare for her marriage by providing her dowry. This liability explains why the birth of a daughter was not celebrated with joy in the old Jewish society. See the shameless daughters section. You can find this article online as well. The dowry was the wedding gift presented to the groom under terms of tenancy. The husband would act as the practical owner of the dowry, but he could not sell it. The bride would lose any control over their dowry at the moment of marriage. Moreover, she was expected to work after marriage, and all her earnings had to go to her husband in return for her maintenance, which was his obligation. She could regain her property only in two cases: divorce or her husband's death. Should she die first, he would inherit her property. In the case of the husband's death, the wife could regain her premarital property, but she was not entitled to inherit any share in her deceased husband's own property. It has to be added that the groom also had to present a marriage gift to his bride. Yet again, he was the practical owner of this gift as long as they were married. So we can understand this has been now going to Christianity. So in the case of basically Christianity was following laws of Judaism in most cases, and under canon law, a wife was entitled to restitution of her dowry if the marriage was annulled unless she was guilty of adultery. In this case, she forfeited her right to the dowry, which remained in her husband's hands. Under canon and civil law, a married woman in Christian Europe and America had lost her property rights until late 19th and early 20th century. For example, women's rights under English law were compiled and published in 1632. These rights included, quote, that which the husband has is his, that which the wife has is husband's, same. The wife not only lost her property upon marriage, she lost her personality as well. No act of her was of legal value. Her husband could repudiate any sale or gift made by her as being of no binding legal value. A married woman was practically treated as an infant in the eyes of the law. The wife simply belonged to her husband, and therefore she lost her property, her legal personality, and the family name. She lost her name also. And you should go through a book from the Narrow Iron Gate by, Karen Armstrong. She was nun herself, and she has talked about all these issues in this book as well. And we have now Hinduism and Buddhism, and there are several, I have just quoted from different religious books of Hinduism and Buddhism, and we can see that. Although it has been said that where the women are being respected, God is dwell there. And but there are some views where we need to discuss those seriously in order to understand what was the position of women. There were reasons for that, why such type of positions were taken by different religions, but usually woman was not considered to be equal to man in any way, or she was considered to be inferior to man. I have just quoted several verses from different religious sources. Women, for example, deserve horse treatment. They possess the deceitfulness of Rakshas, evil spirits, Shamba, Mochi, and others. In their one of their Adai, the learned have written correctly about women's temperaments. Their cunning and deceit are not comprehensible, and it is impossible to reach to their depth. One may even grapple with his shadow, but it is difficult to get the right clue of her conduct. So this is also, and then I have just talked about sometimes some such type of customs like sati was there also there, because I belong to Kashmir, so there was a abode of Hinduism once, and also Buddhism. So that was a confluence of Buddhism and Hinduism, and I have studied about this. So this was also one of the reasons that why women was not given all the rights, and child marriage was a very common thing. And women were being married at the time of their birth, infants. But later on, now many things have changed, alhamdulillah. Things are changing. New laws are coming. As in Muslim societies, as well as in India also, new laws for the betterment of women's position are coming. Legal, a lot of legislation have taken place. And one of the important, features of women's problem was slavery was also infant child marriages. And then sati. Sati was such a heinous crime, and women had to die on the peril of her husband if the husband dies, because basically the concept was that it is kanyadan. And Professor Saab is here. He will just explain if I am wrong somewhere because he's from the field and he's professor also, although he is with government nowadays. But when a woman is married, she is given as down to the husband. She has to only be with her husband, whether in death or life. If husband dies, she should also die. She has no right to live after the death of her husband. And I have just mentioned some stories which have been carried by Asian age in Rajasthan, even modern times, how a woman was just made to go for sati. And that became the Sati Asthal, that place. Now people started, every new couple used to go there to make a circumambulation. That we will also do that if their husband dies, because the woman also will die and the wife will also die. So this was also one of the problems. And I have mentioned about sati and widow burning, and this is one book by V.N. Datta. He says widow burning in India, maximum number of sati cases reported are from Bengal, a northern state in India. He points out that this could be attributed to the wife having right to inherit husband's property in Bengal. Sati is seen mostly in few states of North India. However, Hindutva, the extreme Hindu religious ideology, forces are propagating that sati originated during the medieval Muslim period. This is interesting. And we need to debate it. And alhamdulillah, I have very good scholars from Hinduism. We are talking about these issues because problem is misconceptions. Lot of propaganda. And I was telling my Hindu brothers and Buddhist brothers in India and Sikh brothers as well, living together for 800 years, but we do know each other's religion. At least these Orientalists are studying our religion. They are doing research. But we live together hundreds of years. I don't know Hinduism, and my Hindu brother and these Buddhists don't know Islam. And such misconceptions which were perpetuated by the Britishers, those are still being propagated. And it is said that Muslims were responsible for such type of customs. While as Mughals have never resorted to these things, they tried to just remove all these practices. I have mentioned some such of legislation. So this is something, and there is some religious sanction also for different such type of rituals. We have to accept it, as in case of Muslims, Islam, people say that woman has not equal rights than men. Then they say in property, she is not, equal sharer of the rights. There are reasons. We can discuss these problems. As people say about Islam, let us say about other religions also, what is the position of women? And then see what can we do and how religion can also come to the rescue of women. Religion has to safeguard the rights of women, if it is really a religion sent by God. Otherwise, if one half of the women, one of the population of the world is deprived of their basic rights, how that religion can be called as a genuine religion or a justified religion? And I believe so, as a student of complete religions, who have taught these religions for so many years, we need to think on those terms. And if there is some misinterpretation, because sometimes misinterpretations are more important than the text. It has been said as devil quoting the text. Sometimes when we are just interpreting in such a way our own texts, while we just have biases against women. Mostly women don't interpret themselves. Men interpret the women. That's a problem. We represent women. They don't represent themselves. Hazrat Asha could represent herself. She used to teach 3 khulafas of Islam, 3 caliphs. She was the judge during the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq, Hazrat Umar, and Hazrat Usman Ghani. And many cases were sent to her for the legal opinion. So she could understand women better. And she has described the conditions of the pre-Islamic Arabia better about women. And in this way, this is the bias there. So sometimes religious people, being their biases, tribal instincts, they have tried to misinterpret religion also in order to accord that interpretation to their own tribal prejudices or personal weaknesses. Or sometimes there were economic reasons also for that, as I have mentioned in the case of Bengal. And then I have talked about before the Bengal, Akbar wanted to stop this practice, but he failed. This practice of sati. And other Mughal rulers tried to stop the practice of sati, but they were not successful. The British rulers, but a few people acted as per regulations, but the majority disregarded it. It made many regulations. The right of woman, Hindu wife to reside separately and claim maintenance was given statutory statutory recognition properly by the Hindu Marriage Women's Act. So now these are some reformations which are taking place. Alhamdulillah, I'm happy. Infanticide was a long established practice of the Hindu to throw a child into the Ganga Sagar, the place where the river Ganga entered into the Bay of Bengal, in the fulfillment of the religious vows. It was a custom when a childless woman prayed for children, she would take an oath to offer a child to Ganga Sagar if she could become the mother of more than one child. So what you can do? There are some practices which are not sanctioned, we may not be sanctioned by religion, but because of the reasons, different reasons, over the period of time. And I have discussed many such aspects. And now, in this regard, the 5 important acts have taken place in order to improve the position of women in the Indian context. So then this is the Marriage Act and the Hindu Succession Act, and I mentioned about all these. And then a sense of slavery was inculcated in her from very beginning, that she was called to do pativarta, husband worship. Pativarta, the best woman is a woman who worships her husband. Because in the religion of women, there is no bigger God than her husband. So it is known as pativarta. So, and then there I have mentioned several things, but since I have to also talk about feminists, and I have talked about women in Buddhism. So little bit I will talk about women in Buddhism, then I will go to feminists. So this was the treatment meted out to women by philosophers, then by the religions, Semitic as well as non-Semitic, Aryan religions, Indic religions, and Semitic religions. And I will talk about Islam also. Because we have to do comparative study, as my teacher used to say, दिया हमने बहुत कुछ लिया है, क्या क्या कुछ सुबह करिए भाई अपना हिसाब साफ करिए. We have taken much and we have given much. Now the morning is closed. Let us see what we have done and what they have done. We have to see things in a comparative perspective, because Islam is being blamed that Islam has denied all rights to women. And Muslims have been made to believe that they have not given women rights. While as Umar used to complain to the Prophet ﷺ, no, women don't accept anything of ours. You have given them that much of power. They don't listen to us anymore. And Quran mentions about Hazrat Aisha. She says, Allah will absolve me of all the allegations leveled against me in the ifq. She was that strong a lady. She could ride on a camel and go to fight with Ali, Razallahu anhu. And a woman like Khansa would go in the battlefield searching Prophet after coming to know that her husband was killed, her sons were killed, her brothers, but she was searching in the battlefield. Women used to accompany the battle, armies in the battle. So they were given a lot of rights, and they could go to masjid, they could go to Eidgah for offering prayers, and they were given complete chapter of Quran, Surah Nisa, where women have been given rights. And in one of the conferences in the USA, it was on women and religion, I proved the property rights of women are more than men. If you need, I can send you that article. And as has been said by one great scholars, all the prizes have been won by women. Gold prize goes to women, silver prize goes to women, bronze prize goes to women, and consolation prize goes to men. Consolation, you are the custodian of women. She can earn, she can just, ask still her husband to give her, rights to her, give her, maintenance, and husband can borrow money from her wife. She may be earning hand, she has no responsibility. She is the king, and she is the kingmaker, and she is the homemaker, and also home minister. And this is the, and Hazrat Aisha says, we were considered to be nothing during that time of pre-Islamic age. We had no rights at all. And one man used to own 10 women, marry 10 women. And when the husband of a woman died, his elder brother would put a chadar on that woman, and she belonged to him without any resistance. And women were buried alive. When on the day of judgment, the newborn baby who was buried alive, she will ask for which sin you were buried alive. Quran says. So women were buried, girl child was being buried alive, especially in the tribe of Tamim. This was very common. This practice was very common, that women were buried alive. And who gave women rights? Islam, religion. And I do believe Islam is some new religion. I believe this religion was preached by all the prophets. It came to all the places of the world because Allah says, Inna Deena Indallah Islam. And if you study Hinduism, if you study Buddhism, if you study Christianity and Judaism, you will find that Islam has been the continuation of all these religions. There is a lot of misconception about Islam. People think that Islam is some new religion. No. There has been only one religion always, and that religion has come to all parts of the world, according to Islam. And we have to believe in all the prophets. Mention of 25 is also made in Quran. But there are so many prophets, lam naqsus alike, which have been not mentioned. And there is every likelihood that India had also received revelation. And there are scholars in India, they say that Buddha, Rama, they might be also prophets, although they have been not mentioned. And their all teachings, when I have studied Upanishads, when I have gone through Vedas, when I have gone through Gita, I could find several similarities between Islamic teachings and Gita. And especially I was told by that book, what is the meaning of sincerity, ikhlas, nishkam karma. Nishkam karma. To be like a swan, to be like a lotus tree in the water, not affected by the world, though you are in the world, as water does not affect a lotus tree. So such type of understanding and the loyalty to God and brothers and the relations. So, but the problem is a lot of propaganda has taken place and Islam has been, sidelined, shortlisted as something different from other religions, as Islam is some innovation. But as Muslims, we believe there have been only one religion, that is submission before the will of God. And all the prophets who belong to different religions, they were preaching the same gospel. And Islam says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'amati wa raditu lakum dina Islam dina. On this day, we have completed your deen and perfected that bounty and made the submission of before the will of God your way of life. So in this way, we have to understand that. Now, going to Buddhism, for example, a sense of slavery was inculcated in her from a very beginning, that she was called Pativar. And the Buddha was asked by Ananda, how shall we behave towards a woman? He answers, you must avoid seeing one. Interesting. Buddha was asked by Ananda. You know Ananda? Ananda was one of the disciples and cousins of Buddha. When Buddha started asking questions to the scholars, priests, they became very angry with him, his disciples. One of them was Ananda. He was his cousin. And then they left Buddha. So what type of man you are? You are challenging our authorities. But when Buddha was enlightened, these were the people which became the first Sangha. One of them was Ananda. So now Ananda asked Buddha, how shall we behave towards a woman? He answered, you must avoid seeing one. But if nevertheless we see her, what shall we do? Says Ananda. You shall not talk to her, Ananda. But if we nevertheless talk with her, what then? Then you must be very watchful over yourself, Ananda. Nuns were strongly dependent on the male fellows in the Buddhist congregations. According to a report of the Ministry of Health, about 15 lakh girls are being killed in the wombs of mother, and about 1 million girls were killed. Now, this is something the reports. After this, I have mentioned something about it. These are the practical implications of some of the, such type of things. So now, after talking about these, now we can talk about feminism. What is feminism? Feminism is the belief in social, political, economic equality of the sexes, and the movement organized around the belief that gender should not be the predeterminant factor shaping a person's social identity or social, political, or economic right. The theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes and organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests, the 19th and 20th century movement seeking to remove restrictions that discriminate against women. And we have, this word has come from the French language, but I am not discussing that here. So it originated in the perception that there is something wrong with society's treatment of women. There were two things which made possible the more systematic emergence of a tradition of feminist thinking in the 18th century. First, there were the upheavals in the modes and the methods of production and social relationships. There were some reasons why this movement started. There was responsibility was lying with the Industrial Revolution also. It was not all philosophy. There were some compulsions after the World War. Most of the men were killed. Now they needed a workforce. So women were to be taken out from the homes. That was also one of the reasons. And then I have mentioned about such type of different type of motives behind feminist emergence of the feminism. And I have talked about in 1791, Mary Olympic de Gauguin, a noted playwright, published a Declaration of the Rights of Women and the Citizens. And such type of Wollstonecraft was not herself a part of the feminist movement, but her work was widely read and served as a reference for the number of active feminists in both England and other parts. She circulated very powerfully the causes of women's subjugation. So now these are some important women feminists like Annie Bradstreet and Annie Besant. And they have talked about also women, and I have mentioned about that, how many conventions about the women's rights have taken place, which were started by the feminists. For example, in 1849, Seneca Falls. And I had the privilege to go to this place where this movement has started. But mid-century, a second wave of feminism emerged to address the limited nature of women's participation in workplace. A third wave of feminism arose in the late 20th century. The unfortunate result which comes to fore because of the, now see, these were different moments of feminism. I am not discussing in detail because of the paucity of time, and I would like to have your questions, out-of-box questions. You can ask any question. Because of the paucity of time, I am not reading many things, although these are worth reading. And we need to go deeper into the subject because it's a very important subject. And we, without biases, what Muslims have done to women, we should know. What others have done, we should know, because women are blaming all. So if their blames are right, let us understand why they blame and how we can redress their complaints. And we need to address, because they have been done a lot of injustice. Let's accept this. As I said, Islam had given women all the rights. Muslims have snatched all. Now, feminists give, yeah, thank you, sir. Now, feminists give women rights, but not keeping women as women. She becomes some superhuman. She does not need family. She does not need children. She does not need house. She is liberated, because marriage is the worst, institution of slavery, as some feminists say. But feminists themselves have revolted against this philosophy. So I am quoting some. The unfortunate result which comes to fore because of the unbridled approach of the feminists are alarming. For example, Melanie Phillips says, mention feminism to most people and the reaction will probably be one of merely fairly amused indifference. Some men may be irritated by feminist rhetoric. Some women might feel their agenda is a little extreme. Now, feminists accept. But the extent to which feminism in its most extreme form has embedded itself within the institutions and thinking of Britain has not yet been grasped. Feminism has become an unchallengeable orthodoxy, which drives towards forward the whole program of domestic social policy in Britain. Yet this orthodoxy is not based on concepts of fairness and or sociological solidarity. It is based on hostility towards men. So now feminism means to be hostile towards men. And the idea that social roles and conception of what constitute masculine and feminine traits do not constructs rather than natural categories was popularized by the well-known American anthropologist, that is Margaret Mead. She tried to show that culturally humans are like a blank slate and the human behavior is almost entirely shaped by social and cultural processes. So this is some of the way. And then the unbalanced and unjustified campaign started by the feminists has resulted in a very unfortunate backlash for the men, and there is a reaction to that as well, very much perceptible in the West itself. There are now dozens of studies that show that women are as violent towards their partners, if not more so than men. Women are becoming now violent towards their husbands. Previously, if these were men. And study after study shows women are not merely violent in self-defense, but strike the first blow in about half of all the disputes. The American social scientist Murray Strauss and Richard Gilles reported from 2 large national surveys that husbands and wives had assaulted each other at approximately equal rates, with women engaging in minor acts of violence more frequently. Elsewhere, they found more wives than husbands were severely violent towards their spouses. Moreover, there is now considerable, these things are more considerable than men. In other words, as women have become independent of men, they have also become more violent towards them because men have become dispensable. Now they don't need men. Now they fight against them. And for there is a lot of divorces are taking place. About 40% in USA. And now it has impacted also our countries, even Muslim countries. And India also, we have a lot of divorce rates. In Kashmir also. This is because we are following the feminist agenda, where women will not stay in home. Although men could not do that, what women could do, woman has a role, but man has a role. Man can't become woman and woman can't become man. Every role is very important. And they are an-nisa'u shaqaiqur rijal. Women are the second parts of men, says Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hunna libas lakum antum libas lahunna. You are their raiments, they are your raiments. La turisu nisa'a qurha. Don't inherit your woman, if they in coercion. Don't be coercive towards your women. Treat these women. And Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as-salah wa ma malakat aymanukum. The last sermon of the Prophet was, take care of the prayers and women. And Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that the best things have been made to my eye. One is woman and second is prayer. And Prophet had so many wives, but no wife is complaining against him. How he was treating women. And he is laqad kana lakum fi Rasulillah uswatun hasanah. The best model for you is in the life of the Prophet. How he treated his women. So no, we have 3 minutes. I have 3 minutes also. So now they're oriental. These feminists have just, for example, once noted feminist, Germaine Greer, has this to say about the fate of her federalism. I quote, I did not fight to get women out from behind the vacuum cleaner to get them onto the board of Howard. She says, this wasn't the purpose of feminism. We wanted to give them rights, but now they are starting revolting against their husbands. And life has become hell in the house. And then Marx, first champion of the movement of women's emancipation, were not less than Marx and Engels. They are founders of communism who preached in their Communist Manifesto, 1848, that marriage, home, and family were nothing but a curse, which kept women enslaved. See, women must be liberated from domestic servitude and achieve full economic independence through whole-time employment in industry. The subsequent champions of feminism insisted that women must be granted as much freedom to indulge in illicit sex, as the men through co-education. Now you can see the scene and impact of that everywhere in our educational institutions. I could see many, health resorts, these things are happening now. And there are so many illicit relations are taking place because this has been preached by people like Marx and the atheists. And we call it emancipation of women. This is worst subjugation of women. And woman has been made as a victim. She is now only the sex object. She has been made a commodity. Her respect she has lost her respect. She is not to be considered as a mother under whose feet is heaven or the paradise. She is now the showcase. She is the Shammi Mahfil. So in this way, you can see what Marx has said. And he says that the subsequent champions, it has said that the subsequent champions of the feminists insisted that women must be granted as much freedom to indulge in illicit sex as the men through co-education, employment outside the home, alongside men, mixed social functions and courtship before marriage in semi-nude fashions, And you know what was the speech of Bertrand Russell when he was given Nobel Prize? He said the people who say it is devilish to not indulge, to be, libertine and permissive, it is devilish to say this. This was his speech after his Nobel Prize. And you expect that women will be given rights by this. And see how you are selling a motorcycle. What woman has to do with that? So advertisement woman will be there. What woman has to do with this? You may do anything, but woman is being used as showpiece. And we call it as emancipation of women. What type of emancipation? From everything. And this is the problem, but women are being in this way victimized, but we don't understand sometimes. But now people, even the feminists are realizing this. And then see, she can mix her social gatherings, which include drinking, drug taking, and dancing with contraceptives, sterilization and abortion to prevent unwanted pregnancies, and state-controlled nurseries and public boarding schools, assuming the responsibility for the rearing of their children, many of whom would be illegitimate. This is, in essence, the modern concept of women's rights amounts to. This we can find in the book Maryam Jamila, Islam in Theory and Practice. She was herself a Jew and she is a revert. And she knows West better than we know, because she belongs to that world. And then there are many others. Men seem to be cowed that they cannot fight back, and it is time they did. She calls, this is a feminist says about that. The feminist woman activists as the most stupid and nasty, she says herself. And Camilla Paglia, a famous feminist, says that after indulging in the campaign of spittle and knitting needles against men, the feminists have already lost their cherished objectives. The first ever all-women convocation on women's rights attended by 300 delegates ended in Seneca on 1840 with demands for universal suffrage and social, but that did not happen. Then I have given many more. Now, little bit, I will 5 minutes if I give me to tell you something about Islam. After discussing all these things, I will just like to say what has been said by Montgomery Ward. He has talked about this. He says that I have found evidence in some of the early sources that seems to show that Muhammad made things better for women. Montgomery Ward. Because in Arabic we say, Al-Fazlu ma shahida bil ada. The best thing is that which is being endorsed by the enemies. Al-Fazlu ma shahida bil. And he is the man who has opposed many aspects of Islam. But here he talks about women. I have found evidence in some of the early sources that seems to show that Muhammad made things better for women. It appears that in some parts of Arabia, notably in Mecca, a matrilineal system was in the process of being replaced by a patrilineal one of the time at the time of Muhammad. Growing prosperity caused by a shifting of trade routes was accompanied by a growth of individualism. Men were amassing considerable personal wealth and wanted to be sure that this would be inherited by their own actual sons and not simply by an extended family of their sisters' sons. This led to a deterioration in the rights of women. At the time Islam began, the conditions of women were terrible. Who says this? Montgomery Ward. The conditions were very terrible. They had no right to own property, were supposed to be the property of the man, as I said. And if the man died, everything went to his sons. Muhammad improved things quite a lot by instituting rights of property ownership, inheritance, education, and divorce. He gave women certain basic safeguards. Set in such historical context, the Prophet can be seen as a figure who testified on behalf of women's rights. A lot also depends on what sort of Muslim society you look at. Many Westerners today think that Islam holds women in the heaviest oppression. That may be so in some cases, but only because they look at certain parts of the Islamic world. Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Turkey have all had women heads of state. I therefore do not think the perception of Westerners is entirely correct. So this was something I did not discuss many things about Islam because I thought you can understand yourself. Some of the aspects I discussed, but one point I will end with that so far as education is concerned, it is compulsory for men and women. Talabul ilmi farida ala kulli Muslim and a Muslima. There are hadiths of Muslima. And it has been said by Prophet ﷺ that women can have also their settings in the masjid and they used to go for prayer. And Prophet says, and Bukhari narrates, that if the handmaids of Allah want to go to prayer, you should not stop them from going to masjids. And Hazrat Aisha says, we used to go to masjid when men were also there and they were there. We used to leave the masjid at Fajr and Isha. So they were not, and they used to go to the battlefield, Yatadawa Jurha. They used it to nurse the injured in the battlefield. And there were the poetesses like Khansa, who were the great poets, and they used to recite. Women could, talk in the gathering of the Prophet ﷺ. And many times they used to, ask questions in presence of women. And during the Hajj and other, they were allowed to go and just to accompany men. And in this way, and then they have been given rights in property as well. So in this way, all the religions have given, but sometimes it's interpretation which has created problems. Now, Islamic interpretation also in some cases, as I said, honor killing. That has nothing to do with Islamic teachings about women. In the same way, in Hinduism, sometimes some people have interpreted women in such a way where we find that woman has been denied her rights. So we need such enlightened scholars of Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity and Judaism who can try to reconcile with the positions of women and also study what the challenges are coming from the feminists and then see how far these challenges are right and wrong and how we can reconcile and restore the status of women as their mother, as daughter, as sister, and as spouse. Because women have so many roles to play, and only women can play those roles, man can't. So in many ways, man is weaker than woman in that sense. So Allah has created women who had man for a purpose, and they are counterparts of each other, not enemies, as the feminists, suppose or they propagate. So with these words, I am very thankful to all of you, Professor Murad, Professor Muhammad, Professor Faham Ghalib, and Professor Dr. Balakrishnan. He is from Telangana, and we met in, mashallah, there in South Korea. We have been there in the International Peace Summit. And it was so nice to meet him there. And I just invited him and he came. So I was not knowing, otherwise we would have just met before. Thank you very much. And I am very thankful to Sister NURUL that she conducted the program very nicely. And all others, Professor Khalik and last but not the least, Professor Abdulaziz Bargut. So who on the short notes just fixed my lecture. Inshallah, we can discuss this problem in other lectures also. This is a very great problem. We can discuss each and every subject separately, like feminism, like religion and Islam. Thank you very much.
Hamidullah Marazi, we thank him very much for his sharing of knowledge. I think there are many questions here, and we open the floor to questions. If there is, yeah, please.
Sir, thank you. In the book of Averroes or even Rouge commentary towards Plato's Republic, he mentions that women can hold positions as men, and they have the right to the same level of education as men. What was the context that he was living to say such statements?
You talk about Ibn Rushd.
Ibn Rushd, Averroes.
Should I take all questions or one by one? Okay. So very good question, Ibn Rushd. Although it is not his overall position, at one place when he was making commentary on Plato, he has said this thing, that had women been given the rights, the status which was suggested by Plato, that the communism of wives and communism of property, so women could have been better, support for the economic, uprightness of the society. So he was thinking in the economic terms at that time. And that has been the view of also some of the industrialists, that women should be brought out so that economic conditions will be better. So context was that. He was just trying to see in the light of the Western, this Greek philosophy, he tried to interpret in that way. But when he talks in his Badayatul Mujtahid, so there his views are totally different. In the context of Greek philosophy, he was talking in those terms. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Prof, for your insightful lecture.
Little bit introduce yourself.
Oh, Jilwan Tahir, Istac student. Thank you, Prof, for your insightful lecture. I would like to know your perspective and observation about that matter. Human being consists of three ontological parts: natural being, materialistic being, and spiritual intellectual being. You don't think that demanding equality between men and women is a materialistic view rather than spiritual and intellectual and natural view? Because demanding equality is something that emerged in modernism, while the difference between man and woman is a natural differences. Naturalistic view always presents things as they are and keeps the differences. But materialistic view always try to equalize and killing the differences. One of the problems is that while we are trying to equalize men and women, we always have to equalize men to women or women to men. When we are equalizing women to men, men do not lose their center. And man will be a measure and qiyas for women. For example, when women should have some rights and opportunity as a man in a certain company. That time we are going to create a manly woman that has the same needs and value like man. So man still a center for women. Another problem is equality.
Can ask a question. So because otherwise because of the time constraint, you ask the question. Make it a question so that we can.
I would like to know your observation about it.
Okay.
Another problem is equality can be applied on quantity, not quality. Okay, in the naturalistic views, there is no term of better and higher. It's all belong materialistic view. What I mean is, we cannot say red color is better than yellow color, or orange fruit is better than apple, because each has its own value.
I understood what you say. Okay, I understood. If you just make it a question, that will be better, because there are many questions. People are online as well. Maybe.
Okay.
We make a question.
I mean, this is a problem and dialectic between naturalistic view and a materialistic view. The problem of women and men.
Right. I could understand your question. I think that you want to say that there are different views about women. If we consider women from the materialistic point of view, then we will not consider whether who is superior, man or woman. Although there is no superiority problem of inferiority, it is the roles. It is equity, not equality, we can say. So there at some places, women has better roles than men. In some cases, women knows better than men. So they are complementary to each other rather than contradictory to each other. We can say like that. So we have to see women as women, not as a material object. You want to say that. And secondly, we have to understand the role of women in different capacities, and then the role of man in different capacities. And roles can't be similar in many ways. And even Bertrand Russell has said, as I mentioned, that we need to give women some education to prepare them for motherhood. So how you can deny this important feature of women? Without motherhood, what is the important role of women? Although other roles are also important, but motherhood is the greatest role. And the pain she suffers at the time, labor pain, man can't endure that. And she has been told for the reason that one said, man came to Prophet ﷺ, whose rights are more? He said, your mother. Then he said, your mother. Then your mother. Then your father. 3 times mother has been given prevalence to man, to father. Because, and it has been said that al-jannatu tahta aqdamil umhat, aw kama qala Rasulullah, that the paradise lies beneath the feet of mother. And now we all have mothers, alhamdulillah. And the love of mother, that can be only equivalent to one portion of Allah's love, as in hadith also it is said. So in this way, a woman has such a role which men can't play. So roles are different. But as a human being, she is also a human being, min nafsi wahid. They have been created from the same soul. So they are not different, that they are not degraded in any way. Every individual, whether man or woman, have their important roles, and we can't compare them and we can't contrast them. We can just identify their important roles and then give them their duties and their dignities, alhamdulillah. And that has been given, alhamdulillah, by Islam and throughout the annals of history. So this sometimes maybe we can have a complete lecture on the subject, and we can discuss what are the different philosophies about the women emancipation. Then that will be, we can take up this question in detail. Here we will just, because we have tried to, try to encapsulate so many things about women, from religions, from feminism, from philosophy, from Islam. So we will not be able to do justice only in one aspect. So your question is very valid. Inshallah, it can be discussed again. But I feel your basic point was that we should understand the roles of women, and we should not compare her as a material object or this object or that object, but we should consider as she is, as her essence, as a human being. So this was, and I'm very happy that many scholars from different parts of our Professor Rizwan and others, there are registrars and so on, they're online, maybe they may also some
Yeah,
questions.
one is asking, Mughis, I don't know. Yeah, you can turn on your microphone and ask. Someone online? Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yeah, please.
Mughis.
Thank you, Professor MARAZI. It was a brilliant lecture, as always. I have a couple of questions. I'll very quickly put them to you, and I would like to know how you see this. Basically, I'm trying to steelman feminist perspective, because as you rightly said that it didn't come up properly in the presentation due to paucity of time, and you were referring to Q&A. So let us just steelman their position, and would like to know how you would respond to them. For example, when you talked about family and oppression, for example, their argument would be that is it that women have to choose between family or being oppressed within family? As in, for example, when we give this argument, sir, that when you quoted Russell and when you quoted Marx and Engels and all of those people, their argument would be that this critique is not proper critique, but it is moral patronizing. It is moralizing, as in sexuality is problematic, or sexual perversion or sexual freedom is problematic. That is a patronizing or a moralizing assertion rather than argument. It's not an argument. It's not a critique of that. For example, then you said, so, that the girl is advertised in front of car. Actually, that is the problem of capitalism. As in here, feminism is abused by capitalism, like even religion is abused by capitalism, where money enters into Molly profession, or money enters into even religious expression. So that is problem of capitalism rather than feminism. So that is my first question, as in how you see feminist argument without patronizing or moralizing. How can we like philosophically deal with them when they talk about sexual freedom, or when they say, why do we have to choose? Why do we have to make this choice? Why cannot this be sexual liberation? Then second question is that when you talked about Islam, that's very true. That's very true when you said that Islam moved ahead, as in Islam made a reformatory, approach by giving women property rights and all of those things. But then a few Muslim scholars make this argument that because of this posture of Islam, where it started giving women rights to women, it is actually a progressive posture, as in it has to move forward. For example, we still have the questions like, if I give very briefly this example, like women, the beating of women, for example, or talaq, women have no right over that, like unanimous talaq, or there is half testimony of women, or even the hadith you quoted, malakat aymanuhum, there is still that slavery element over there, that the women that are slaves. So there are certain elements still there within Islamic fiqh or Islamic positions, which would demand progression, as in how do we then jurisprudentially see it? How do we hermeneutically see Islamic text? As in, do we have to move? Do we have to change certain rules? Because then, so that is the problem with that argument, that Islam was reformatory. Because we can quote, as I quoted few things, we can quote these things from Buddhists or Christians or Hindus, and as well as Islam, where we have regressive practices. So how is Islam different?
Okay.
If we create difference in Islam, then it has to be progression. But how far it can be progressive? Where will be
All
the
right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
MashaAllah.
Thank you.
It
Thank
is
you.
Dr. Mugis. He's from Jawaharlal University, India, one of the very important universities. He's a student from philosophy, so he has every right to ask a philosophical question. And people are agitated about these subjects. A lot of propaganda is going on everywhere. And he is right when he says that capitalism is using everything for just consumerist purposes and objectives. And even religion is being galvanized for these commercial purposes sometimes. And feminism, and as I said about the motorcycle, and what is woman have, what role woman has to be in the advertise when we are going to sell a motorcycle or car. She may not drive it, but she is being used, as a propaganda or as advertised item. So basically, problem is that feminists have an argument. They have a point. They will not see what religion says about that. Because as I said already, they have a philosophical narrative. And feminism is also a philosophy. It is not a religion. They will not see their problems from the prism of religion. And we want them to see it from the prism of religion. That's wrong. So they have a narrative which they have created because after seeing the oppression of women, or whatever the reasons, religion may be not responsible, but the society may be responsible. Community may be responsible. Tribal traditions may be responsible. Or some inhibitions or backwardness may be responsible. Poverty may be responsible. But woman has been in oppression. That is the reality, as Buddha used to say. He says that if a person is being pierced with an arrow, rather than discussing where from the arrow has come, let us take this arrow out. We know that man is suffering. We should not discuss where from the suffering has come. Sometimes we are losing our battle in talking about these debates rather than solving the problem. So this, we know that woman has been in problem, that this was a reaction against everything, society by the woman. And we have to understand that. And they have the point. But sometimes they also have transgressed the limits. Then they did not consider other aspects. They just wanted to oppose for the sake of opposition. Religion has done this to us. Philosophy has done to us. Society has done to us. Man has done to us. And that is just that is thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And they're not ready to go to some reconciliation. But we need to reconcile with feminists also. We need to reconcile with philosophers also. We need to reconcile among the religions. Let all of us try to reach to some conclusion where we can reach to minimum common point, where we can restore the dignity of women, which has been eroded, whatever the reasons. Women is suffering, no doubt. And you will see the picture I had put in the front, the woman, old woman with all of, the vagaries of times and everything. So we have to understand that. And we have to restore her. And second point was, for example, Islam and how far there are several practices in Islam which can be also considered as not in support of women and her equality. So one is that what people have done because of the ijtihad or their own legislations, whatever the reasons. For example, you have a tribal society. Tribals have become Muslims. They have their own tribal traditions apart from Islamic law, Sharia. So they sometimes invoke their traditions also. They give more importance to their own traditions than to Sharia. In many cases, I do need to mention, for example, honor killing or preventing women from education. When Prophet could allow women to go for education, Khairun Nisa Quraysh Yarkibnal Able. The best women are the women of Quraysh. They are riding on the camel, and we don't allow women to ride the car, to drive the car. So who is to be blamed? It is not Prophet. Prophet had told that best women are those who can ride on the camel. But you don't allow women to drive a car. Driving a camel is difficult than driving a car. So who is to be responsible? And this is the point which has been mentioned by Amna Wadud when I was discussing with her. So we want to interpret Islamic text in light of our problems also, women problem, and that's good. But everyone has right. But it should not be stretched too far that you are not doing justice with the context and the text. So in this way, they have an argument, and Islam has that possibility that we can interpret And it has been done by Muhammad Abduhu and Iqbal and others. They have talked about that. And especially Rasul Misri and also Ismail Qardawi in his book, Al-Halal wal-Haram fil Islam. So they have mentioned about these all problems you mentioned. And they have come out with very, very cogent arguments in favor of the women's liberation, but with specific, features. It is not that unbridled freedom as we find in the West, as has been preached by Marx and others. So in this way, there is, and then Wahid Khan's book, Women in Islamic Society, very good book that is, or other books I have just seen, Mullah Maududi's Hukukul Zawjain, and then Dr. Ali Shariti's Fatima, one of the very great books that is, she and Sartre said, if I had accepted any religion, that would have been the religion of Ali Shariti. Sartre, John Paul Sartre has said. So in this way, we have these narratives, so this can be done. So there is possibility of ijtihad, and we can improve the status of women in light of that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. You have raised an important discussion on the feminism and gender studies. I'm not looking at this at the social or political level. I'm raising this at the epistemological and ideological level. Feminism is an ideology. It is also based on an epistemology. The concern here is with the Muslim intellectual community. In fact, last few weeks, we had a student doing a PhD proposal on Islamic feminism. I think that we in the university and as custodians of knowledge should be aware of not reproducing the knowledge of feminism in the name of Islamic feminism.
Right.
And what has happened is that an example of that defense proposal, the student and I suppose the supervisor has not guided her properly. There's no political discourse, there's no manner in which that corpus is subjugated. We have taken it lock, stock, and barrel and just relabel it as Islamic feminism, not knowing the origins of it, not knowing how it started, not knowing its ideology, not knowing its geography and history. So it's important for the Islamic intellectual community, academics in universities, supervisors, professors, to be alert of proposals. And this, to me, I mean, personally, I have my bias. To me, feminism is not an epistemology. It's not legitimate. And I find that many academics, Muslim women academics across the discipline would have this category of gender studies as one of the areas of interest. My worry is that we follow and conform to this ideology without a critical understanding of the context. For example, one of the perspectives of feminism and gender studies is Marxism and postmodernism. And when we delve into doing a thesis on such a subject, we need to restructure and we need to negotiate and deconstruct, as I've told you earlier. The idea of deconstruction is important because from deconstruction we can reconstruct. So the thing is that we have to be alert all the time when we talk about feminism, when we talk about gender studies. It's to deconstruct it before we embark on any kind of inquiry.
Right, sir.
Thank you.
I know. So I would just like to say only this much because this is a very right perspective, and I feel that awesome, as Dr. Saab has rightly said. I feel that unless and until we deconstruct, we can't reconstruct. So we need to, for example, I am also trying to do that in my own capacity because this positive time I could not do that. For example, I could have just first mentioned what feminists say. then what are the positions of different religions, then what Islam says about those positions, and whether in consonance or in opposition to that. Then we have to pay way for our approach. So, sir, you may just, so you're right, I agree with you totally.
Okay, we have one question online, and then I think we have to end. Yeah, please, someone online, Professor Muhammad Rizwan,
Oh,
please.
Professor Rizwan, sir. He's a scientist, philosopher.
Okay.
Okay, so it was nice to hear Professor Mazai, as always, and a fantastic hall I can see from here. IIUM, many of my students were there in IIUM, I think.
Mashallah.
Okay, so Professor, actually, you know, my question, if I want to keep it as brief and as concise as possible. Now, the discourse of all these things, what we are talking about right now, and as one of our professors rightly point out, they have their own, I mean, you know, the deconstruction is needed and everything, the epistemic framework. And the current, you know, atheistic moral framework is asking us, okay, fine, we know there are literal texts which can be interpreted in different ways, and we know that they may be distorted, and we know the hermeneutics and all and everything. What they are asking us, okay, fine. So this is the lived reality of believers, okay, and this is the textual interpretation. Tell us the way out.
Okay.
You know, they are telling that you selectively quote from your religious texts, like you quote that the best people, Quraysh women are best because they can ride camel, but you have also text which shows that her salah is better when she prayed it inside her home, inside a mat or whatever. Now you can tell us that Hassan or this is something or this is okay, but just tell us the way out. This is the first question, wherein we have to, you know, I mean, there are apologetic answers, there are hermeneutic answers, and there are so on and progressive and all that fallacies. Okay, this is one. Second, they are telling us, why can't, as an academic, you know, critique, we can say that you have selective readings of text, which may goes either ways, and you are always reading your mind, which has been constructed in a particular milieu, socio-cultural milieu, and a special SPAITIAL, you know, that thing. So how we are going to, you know, navigate all these allegations? If you can throw just a couple of lines on this.
Very nice. This was a very good question. I just believe that we have to see everything in totality. So I have given both the perspectives, what are the negatives and what are the positives. And you're right that there are several such type of texts which support the emancipation of women, but there are some texts which show that we should restrict some actions of the woman. But we have to see everything in the context. Text is to be seen in the context. For example, when Prophet was in Makkah, conditions were different. Women were vulnerable, men were vulnerable. But when he reached to Medina, he said that a time will come when a single woman can go from Hazrul Maut to Sana to Hazrul Maut, 300 miles, and she'll be all alone and she'll be having no fear. So text is to be seen with the context. So Quran has told us all aspects, what are the states of women and where they have to stay and where they have to come out. So yudnina alayhinna jalabibihinna. When they come out, let them put their ornies on their own head. Yaguzzu min absarihinna, yagzuzna min absarihinna. They may just put down, it means that they can come out. But men have been also commanded like this. So in this way, we have to, in what context women is being talked. Because there is, Quran tells us that Allah is the creator of women. Allah knows the conditions, psychological states of women. And then there is Yusuf, Surah Yusuf. What can be the views of women about a particular subject? And then there's Surah Nur about Ashars and other. So in this way, all the aspects of psychological aspects and physiological aspects have been discussed. And we have to see these texts in light of their contexts. And then only we can understand that. And second point is, we can make only a real interpretation of these texts and contexts when we are taking all these teachings in totality, not in a selective manner. And then we can come to some conclusion. And we should take in totality. There's a holistic way. The people who are listening the whole statement, then they follow the better part. But we have to listen first. So this can be our approach, and then we need a galaxy of scholars, for example, to solve the women problem, where there are some feminists also, and there should be some legal scholars also, there should be some sociologists also, and there should be women scholars also who know the psychological and physiological problems of women, and doctors and medical doctors, and then only we can reach to some holistic view about women. This time we are just making a partial interpretation of everything, and that is creating problems. And at least in the universities, we are doing research about women, and we take everything into consideration. When a person is doing research on some women problem, he will take all aspects into consideration. But when we are seeing women from the religious point of view, we take only one aspect. I am a Hanafi, I will see women only from the Hanafi point of view, Shafi point of view, or Al-Hadith point of view, or Shia point of view. And that is the most, I should say, unscientific and irrational approach. We have to take first Quran, then Sunnah, then other things. We are sometimes giving more prevalence to historical records, sometimes to traditions. Then we see everything in light of our own biased mirror. And we need to come out from those cobwebs. And we have to see women from the holistic and integrated perspective. As we have integration of knowledge, we need to also have integrated approach towards women as well. And we have to take also the criticism of the feminists very seriously. As always, I quote Imam Ghazali, so your enemy will never pinpoint something which is not in you. If the feminist says something, woman has been done something wrong, that will be really wrong. And we have to address that issue. They are very good, educated women. When woman has been done injustice, they have revolted. There was no other way. And if you put your feet on even ant, it will also bite. So when women have been just oppressed, they have just revolted. So we have to understand why they revolted. As Ghazali would say, I have never become happy unless I wanted to know why an atheist becomes an atheist. What is the reason why they became feminists? Why they are opposing religion? There may be some reason. So in this way, you are right. We need to take it very seriously. What do we do? In most cases, Marcus has written a book, Das Kapital, in 18 years. We want to reply it in 18 seconds. There's the problem. Or sometimes 18 hours, or at most 18 months. But he has taken 18 years. At least we have to understand we are in a hurry to reply without understanding the problem. And that is the problem we are not able to approach and attract our youngsters. We don't understand their mind. And what are the modern narratives about these all subjects? So I think you are right. We can just have a lot of, deliberations on these subjects, and only we can come out with some tangible solution to this problem. And we should not take it lightly. This is really a problem. Women, they are facing problems, whatever the reasons, but they are suffering. And their suffering should be arrested by religion, by philosophy, whatever legislations we can make. Thank you very much.
So,
Yes.
okay, maybe one more. Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. So we said that most of the ancient civilizations and scholars concerned women as a property. So does Islam, like nisaakum harsun lakum, ad-dunya mata'un wa khayr mata'i ad-dunya al-mar'atu salihah. Even if we can try to interpret it, what we can explicitly understand is Islam is also considering women as a property. How do you respond to this? And how did the mainstream Islam scholars and institutions respond to the interpretations and activism of feminist Islamic scholars?
MashaAllah. But when you say Khairul Matai Dunya, Imratul Salih, this word is a property or is a provision. And the best provision is the pious woman. Men also are provision. Women also are provision in their sense, because we are for some different purpose. We have not live here. To say that woman is the best asset, we can't call it property. This means Khairul Mata means asset. It does not mean property. So we have to understand the meaning of the word. Mata is not property in that sense. It is a thing which is useful, which can be used, which has some utility. Mata. And we have Professor Fahim Ghalib Sahab. He is from Arabic. He can just explain it better. So Mata does not mean, and dunya has been called also Mata. And Mata al dunya qalil. This word is a very scanty property or asset. So in this way, Mata in this sense is a very positive sense. Sometimes he is nothing. This man is nothing. It does not mean he's a thing. He's a man. He's a soul. He's a spirit. So in this way, basically, Prophet wants to say that women should be treated in such a way so that they can become a provision for us, for the life of, and for themselves as well. And they will just become helpers to them in the way of Allah, to realize the purpose of our life. And what is that? To worship Allah. And it has been said, believing men and believing women. At many al-mu'minina wal-mu'minat, al-muslimina wal-muslimat. Men and women have been, used, side by side. So they have been not segregated. They have been not separated. And second point is that, you say that harsul lakum. So what it means? For example, man can't just, man is not able to bear children. It is only women can do that. And now there's a problem in the West. Because of the abortions, other things, now they are facing a lot of problems. So women have that capacity, in that sense, has been said. And secondly, and to keep your progression going, to your population just remaining there, otherwise there will be a lot of problems in the world. World will perish if new children are not born. So in that sense, and women can also only do that, play that role, and no one can. And that sense, it has been said that they are something subservient to you. No. Although it has been said, in what sense? Because you have to depend on them. So it means that woman has been absolved from the responsibility of earning, because she has such responsibilities which man can't take, to bearing the child. It is not a small thing. She is doing such a great service for humanity, woman. As Iqbal says, मकालाते अफलातून न लिख सकी, लेकिन उसी के शर से फूटा है Sharare Aflatun. And Iqbal says that although women could not write the dialogues of Plato, but Aflatun was also given birth by a woman. So, had there been no woman, there would have no Aflatun also. That is Plato. So, woman has such a role which no man can play. So, in this way, we have to understand in what sense Hirsul Lakum has been used, or Arijalu Qawwamuna 'ala Nisa. But it has been never said that women have no rights, and their rights have been mentioned. Surah Nisa is there, Ahzab is there, Surah Nur is there. There are so many chapters of the Quran, and you can identify those. So we have to see all these things in totality, not in isolation. In most cases, people are taking only those aspects which are suiting to their agenda. And that is propaganda, not agenda even. They want to propagate. They are not serious to understand this. And the people like Maryam Jamila, like Yona Haddad, who was against Islam, and she was imprisoned by the Taliban. And then they asked her, are you becoming Muslim or not? She said, if I will say them that I don't want to become Muslim, they will be hurt. If I will tell them I want to become Muslim, that is not true, because I don't want to become Muslim. She was a Wall Street journalist working in Afghanistan. Haddad, Yona Haddad. And Yona. Then she told them that if you just allow me, I will read Islam. If I will convince, I will become. And afterwards, she became Muslim. And she understood that Islam has given better place to women. Same is the case of this Maryam Jamila. And hundreds of women I can quote who have become, because they understood that Islam has given better position to women in this way, which has been not given to her by feminists. She is being used as a propaganda piece, advertised piece by the consumerists and capitalists. No one challenges that. But when Islam says a realistic position that women can bear child, what is wrong with that? Men can't do this. In that sense, it is not in derogatory sense. It is in a very positive sense. And it is also, if woman does not want to work, she will not be compelled, because she has to do other things which men can't do. But if she wants to work, she will not be stopped. Hazrat Khadija, she was the biggest businesswoman. And Hazrat Aisha, she was the biggest scholar of Islam. And Prophet said that as has been said by this Farid bin Attar in his Tazkirat Awliya, 1/3 of religion has been received by Muslims, 1/4 of Islam has been received by Muslims from Hazrat Aisha. So in this way, their role has been never degraded in Islam. And they have played a very important role. And Shafa bint Abdullah, she was the market inspector. And then Khansa, as I talked about the women's fight. And some of the teachers of Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Bukhari, they were women. So hadith, what to say of other subjects. So in this way, we have to see things in totality, not in isolation, what the Western people say, what they have given women, as they have themselves said, what they have given to women. She has neither remained woman nor man. She is in between. I don't know what she is now. She can't go to her home because she has no children. And she is free, but free from everything. Not as a mother, not as a sister, not as a wife, because she does not want to marry. And this was the greatest injustice to women. And women has been just made really a victim by such type of interpretation by men. So in this way, we have to be very much, we have to see things in totality, not in isolation. Otherwise, we will not be able to do justice with Islam or any other religion also. We have to see also, as I said, that Hinduism, for example, where the women are being respected, deities, devil, they come there. So then other aspects also, then Islam also, and we have to interpret that. And there is possibility of interpreting these verses in such a way which are favorable to women. And alhamdulillah, when women study in that light, they become convinced. Even those women who are the most modest, modern women, they accept Islam. And women, as has been said, I have listened, Haddad, Professor Haddad says, the greatest number of women and youngsters are becoming Muslim, 1:3 in the West. So in this way, they understand what Islam has given to women, the religion has given to women, and which was not given to them by even feminists on the name of liberation of women and equal rights of women. Okay.
Okay. You want to say, you want to add something, Prof?
You want to thank also?
Okay, please. Please.
It would be nice.
All right. You want to say something just a little bit? Prof, to conclude, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, well, I want to thank Prof. MARAZI for delivering this lecture and for the knowledge of everyone. Prof. MARAZI is our visiting visitor who joined us recently. He's been here, inshallah, for another 1 month after his travel back in April. Many thanks. We are very happy and grateful to have you here, Prof. And your sharing is is invaluable to all of us. And of course, that we will benefit from whatever information that you have shared. And in Istac, of course, this is one of the niche area of Istac, which is women and gender studies, Islam, women and gender studies, one of the niche area of Istac. So it's actually one of the main concern of this institute, dealing with the issues related to the women, Islam, women and gender studies. And I hope everyone that also can benefit and then gain a lot of information from your good self, and wish you all the best. He'll be traveling and leaving for Kashmir early tomorrow, early morning tomorrow.
Early morning.
Yeah. So wish you all the best and hope that you will come back, inshallah, in April. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we thank participants online and physical here, and especially to Prof. Hamidullah Marazi for his sharing of thoughts. And before he goes, I think we should take one picture. And yeah, thank you, everybody. And it's an honor that a man